And how is everyone doing this evening? James here with BerryFlow Upstream. Got the whole cast here. Alex was unfortunately unable to make it. He's trying to catch up on some much-needed hours of sleep. But we do have Chris from BlackBerry, editor-in-chief, in-house with us today to join the discussion. How you doing, Chris?
Can't complain. Still snowed in, but that's Canada.
Yeah, you guys got it rough, eh?
Yeah, especially where I live. Like, literally, it's 2 floors. Like, my apartment building is 3 floors, right? And basically, I could jump out of my apartment building and land in a snowbank and be perfectly fine with just jumping out over my balcony. That's how high the snow is. It goes up to almost the 2nd floor of the apartment building. So,
Blaze is planning a fallen snow angel. Brandon, how about Toronto? And Ronell, you both are kind of in the same region, so to speak. How is it over there in terms of the weather?
It's cold again.
Well, yeah, it's cold today, but it's been like everything's kind of melted now, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's just kind of that tail end of winter. We're just the last few really cold days, and then I'm sure by the end of the month and in April, it's gonna start, being super wet and disgusting.
That's how it is here in Florida. I mean, I'm running around in my shorts and literally opening up windows trying to get more cool than what it is. So. So one thing that I think might be able to cool me down is that new Porsche device. The thing's hot. I mean, it's pretty nice. The P9983 Graphite release, they followed it up, kind of going around the whole bezel, making it darker. They did the same thing with the Z10. I don't know if you guys happen to see the Z10s that they did in black. Those were very nice as well. I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about these devices because they're so expensive. I'll never actually hold or see one. What do you guys think about the Graphite and the fact that they're making multiple editions of these Porsche phones?
I don't know. I think, for the people who they're specifically built for, it's perfectly fine. Everybody always makes fun of BlackBerry for, essentially releasing another $2,000 phone is what it really comes down to. It's like $1950 on the Porsche design website, but there's people out there who buy them, and the agreement is in place with Porsche Design to continue to keep on making these devices, so there has to be some profit made. I think it's perfectly fine that they go ahead and keep on producing them as long as they're not losing money on them. And honestly, I don't understand how they could lose money on them because essentially they're just recycling parts, so to speak, with a brand new shell on it, and then charging people $2,000. So it's obviously not a device for everybody. Not exactly everybody has $2,000 to go ahead and pick one up, but for the people who do and the people who want it, and why not? They exist.
Yeah, they probably all need to sell like 5 of those, like in the store, and that kind of like pays the store's rent for a month.
Yeah.
But no. In all honesty, I mean, like they've obviously done the research. There's obviously a market for it. It's kind of just a continuation of that trend they've been doing, where it's a super, they're trying to keep their hands in a little bit of everywhere. They've got the super high-end Porsche devices that work for that market. I mean, if you look at some other high-end devices like I think it's the Virtu or something, and those things are like $3,000, and I don't see them being any better than these Porsche designs. In fact, the Porsche designs seem to be a bit more competitive in performance, especially in that ultra high-end, area of the device market. So I think they're doing a good job in that respects. Of course, common people like us will never, have these devices.
Yeah.
What about you, Ronell? Are you too much of a commoner to ever have a Porsche device, or you might pick one up?
Nah, I mean, the bank account disagrees with it completely, but I think, I don't know if celebrities grab onto these devices a lot, but I would assume so. I mean, if anybody's watching the Keeping Up with the Kardashians, I mean, some of them still have those Gold 9900s, so I don't see why one of them wouldn't pick up one of these high-end devices. Maybe Kanye West can hook Kim up with one.
As another gift. Keep sliding her P designs devices so she stays on board. I think it's kind of cool that they're doing the Graphite in specific, because it allows a little bit more exclusivity, right? It was an exclusive device. It was already, brand new, one of a kind, so to speak. And now they've kind of done another iteration. So it's kind of like the Passports, those limited edition 50 that went out. It's like even a smaller batch, so to speak, with the Graphite versus the original. I'm definitely interested in maybe getting a hands-on to see what some of the differences were. I think the original had a glass weave back. It was a glossy type back similar to what the Z30 had. And then the new version is a leather backing, hand genuine leather. So it'd just be interesting to kind of hold two of them and see like which is nicer in the hand. I would think the leather, but that glass weave, that glossy back was very, very nice.
Yeah, it just happens to be a fingerprint magnet. I think that would be the only thing that would detract me from it. I despise fingerprints all over my devices. Always got a fiber cloth close by just to clean them off.
I'm the same way, especially if like I see like specks of dust, it drives me absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So I can definitely understand that. So moving on from there, I mean, if you have this $2,000 device, you can't actually get BlackBerry Care protection on it, which I think is kind of amusing now that they've just announced that. What do you guys think of the whole Care package? I know HTC had recently came out with their own version of basically the same thing. Apple has been doing this with their products for a while. Do you think this is something you'd invest in? I think personally as a Red Passport owner, I'm pretty tempted to go. And I'm biased here as well because I just broke previously a BlackBerry Passport, so I look at this red one and it's so nice that I don't want it to get messed up. So I'm thinking of dropping. I think it's only like $5 a month, and it extends the warranty for a full year. Blaze, what do you think about it?
I think it's another revenue stream for them, and why not offer it? I mean, it doesn't really add too much to their overhead to be able to go ahead and offer it, and pretty much every other company is starting to offer solutions like that. So why not, right? I mean, for me, it wouldn't be something that I'd put all my devices on, of course, but I'd put my Red Passport on there for sure. I mean, what difference does it make if it doesn't cost them any more in the long run to add that to their offerings? Then why not offer it? Right? There's plenty of people out there that would like to be able to go ahead and have the additional comfort and insurance of knowing that their phone isn't going to not be replaceable at some point in time just because they drop it or smash it or spill something on it, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, the important thing here is that they can just go directly to BlackBerry and get their devices, taken care of from that respect. I remember way back when I had my iPhone, I got the Apple Care, and it was a lot easier just dealing with Apple and sending your device, and they could just replace it like that instead of having to go through a carrier and get it replaced in that manner. And sometimes it takes a week or two. And I can imagine that this way, being directly with, communicating directly with BlackBerry, having that care plan with BlackBerry, I imagine the turnaround time, we'll see, yet to see, but I imagine the turnaround time will be relatively quicker in that respects. I'm just I just don't understand why they didn't have it sooner,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
But no, finish.
Just one quick thing is just that the technology industry with laptops and everything, they've been doing this for years. TVs, computers, Future Shop, Best Buy, everybody's been doing it. So I just don't understand why it took them so long to get into the game.
The honest answer, I think that it may be the case that they probably weren't moving enough devices to warrant it.
Or they had the situation pretty much covered directly through the carriers. Apple and everything like that still did it previously, but they did that. They started that long ago with the computers and stuff like that. Even my MacBook, I had to have my MacBook replaced once before, and the replacement costs alone were $2,700, which is pretty much like the cost of a brand new MacBook. But I think previously BlackBerry had the opportunity. They could have done it, but they didn't necessarily have to do it at that point in time because they had the carrier situation. The carrier support was much better, previously. You could call up AT&T or you could call up T-Mobile or Rogers or Bell, whatever, and talk to those representatives, even though it was somewhat annoying at that point in time, to be able to go ahead and do it. So now that they're specifically offering devices, without carriers, directly on their website and through Amazon and stuff like that, I think it becomes more important to be able to go ahead and offer those secondary solutions, such as the insurance, because of the fact that they don't necessarily have that carrier support in place anymore. You can't call up, I can't call up Rogers and say, hey, my red passport is busted, send me a new one. If I'm outside of my warranty or anything like that, they don't even acknowledge the device. If I had a black one that I purchased from Rogers, sure, but I didn't purchase it from Rogers. I purchased it from Amazon, and Amazon doesn't have that in place. So with that lack of carrier consistency there, if we can call it that, it gives them a better opportunity to be able to go ahead and offer the extra care solution plan. So, it's making up for some of the agreements and the loss of carriers, I guess you could say.
That's a great point to make on. Ronell, in your field, do you find that those kinds of things are lacking? Because I know, at least from a consumer perspective, if I go to shop BlackBerry, I'd like to have, as Blaze suggested, to have that care option if I want an extended warranty for my device. It's not like I'm buying it, I'm going to have it once, and that's the last interaction I have. So it does feel like almost the system was broken in terms of the customer experience when buying from shop BlackBerry. So as Chris said, it's definitely an additive. In your line of work, do you think the care protection package and that offering is going to be something valuable for BlackBerry Ronell?
Definitely. I mean, I've had customers ask me, "Oh, is there an additional plan for my BlackBerry device if I did accidentally drop it or something would happen to it, right?" And I mean, I called up BlackBerry directly, and the answer was no, right? So definitely, it's a great addition. I think one of the problems was, Apple, they have their own retail locations where, if something is wrong and you do have Apple Care, you can go directly to them, right? In BlackBerry's case, you're only selling through carriers, so the only real way you're going to communicate to the customer if they have an issue is through the carrier. So carriers now, like Rogers and Telus and Fido, they have their own device plans, which they pay monthly, and that tags onto their monthly bill. So it's kind of hard or at that time it was hard for BlackBerry to offer some type of device support when the carriers already had that, but now that Shop BlackBerry is selling a lot more devices outright, I think it's a great move for sure.
Further to that point too, another interesting thing that this can kind of alleviate is that sometimes when people, like for instance, I had a few friends the other day I was meeting up with, and they have BlackBerry 10 devices, and they were kind of sluggish and stuff, and they were under the impression they need to get it repaired. So for like those type of people, they're likely to get that plan right at the beginning for $50 up front or whatever, or the BlackBerry Care plan, pay the monthly fee so that they don't have to worry about it. But the issue is that you have people that don't have those plans now who have BlackBerry 10 devices, and now after 2 years or something of having their Z10 with it being sluggish, they're kind of in that mood of maybe instead of just getting it repaired because it's going to cost them more money now, they're just going to go and switch to somebody else. So like what I've seen, what works for Apple at least, is that they have that care plan. So people are like, "Oh, I'll just get repaired, get a brand new one, and I'll be fine for like another year." And then they get retained with the brand there. They stay with Apple or something like that. So we might see that happen a bit more with BlackBerry devices.
Hopefully the BlackBerry Leap acts as some kind of retainer for them, and that's the thing. We wish it was a stronger retainer ultimately for those people who want that all-touch hardware still. But still, it is kind of an upgrade path. You do have a bigger screen, a bigger battery in terms of like a Z10. Here at a Z30, you know what's up. You're already set for this 10.3 year, so to speak. But that's definitely a good point to make there, Brandon. Tell us a little bit about your application. I know you'd been pushing it through multiple segments in BlackBerry Beta Zone. Have you gone ahead and pushed the application out officially in BlackBerry World, and how's the response been so far?
Yep, so I pushed it out to BlackBerry World on Tuesday on St. Patrick's Day, and the response has been really, really good from the entire community. I put a lot of work into it. I put it in the beta zone, and I was working on it for a long time before release. So I think a lot of those initial bugs that I typically have with my apps when I first released them weren't really present in this because I just had gone really in depth was trying to squash some of those bugs early and not have them in a release build. And overall, people, I think it's kind of working good for Mixcloud.com as well, because they're getting a whole bunch of new users who had no clue the service existed, and I'm getting feedback from users who are like, oh, this is awesome, like I use it for my runs, or I just use it to drive to work in the mornings. It's nice, and it's really fluid, so it's been good. The response has been good.
In terms of like some of the downloads you're seeing, is it on par with what you expected when you initially? Because you have the numbers already from Beta Zone when you were there. Has a lot of that transitioned over?
Yeah, a good chunk is transitioned over. Of course, in the beta zone, you're going to get more people because it's a free app in the beta zone, so people would just download it even if they're not sure about it. It costs $1.99 in the app world, I mean, in BlackBerry world, so people, you know, unless they really, really like it or get a promotion, sometimes if they're not really into like DJ mixes and things like that, they're not going to download it. But overall, I'd say it's been pretty good. What's interested me the most about the download figures is that the majority, I'd say over 95%, have all been on 10.3.1, and it's actually available on 10.2 and above. And I've seen hardly any on 10.2 downloaded. Now, whether that means those people just aren't finding it or they're just not interested in the app, could be one thing or another. But I thought that was interesting.
You've got some hardcore users downloading your app. In other words, no business types that are still sitting on 10.1 or 10.2, right?
No. It's actually the passport is quite a huge chunk on the passport. I'd say about 25% are passport, and then another 30% are on Z30, and then 40% are on what's it called, on the Z10, and then there's a few on Q10 and Q5.
It's interesting that, the Z10 has pretty much kept everybody going at this point. Because when you look at all of the downloads, the Z10 has been like the strongest device when it comes to the download situation. Like if you ask developers what device has the most downloads, the majority of them say the Z10. I would think that the Z10 would start to die off at some point in time soon. Like, people have had those devices for a long period of time now, and it makes sense. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. It makes sense because it was the very first BlackBerry 10 device that was out there. So, the majority of the people probably have one. If you were interested in BlackBerry, chances are you picked up a Z10. Even if you moved to some other BlackBerry 10 device at a later point, you probably have or had a Z10 at some point in time. But it'd be interesting to see if that device starts to die off and it transitions to something else at some point in time soon. Like, say, for example, if the passport started taking over, the majority of the downloads. I'd like to see that happen. But
there's a lot of people who do like the Z10 specifically because they can replace the battery on the fly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you've got different offerings that have a longer battery life, like the Z30 or the passport. Things like that. But for some people, they just, even though the Z10 does have poor battery life, they usually have like a second battery they can just stick right in, and there's a lot of people that still like that form factor, right?
Yeah, that's the other part.
And let's be honest, it's still a pretty solid device 2 years on. It's I've been using it, my Z10 to actually go run nowadays because my passport is a little too big to have on my arm. So I use my Z10 and put my SIM card in to track myself on GPS while I run and all that. And it's still a pretty solid device. I use it for stuff, and it's great. So I mean, there's still that solid user base.
Like you said, the form factor is good, and there hasn't necessarily been another BlackBerry 10 device like it. So that also makes me wonder how many people are essentially out there and their first Z10 died, and they, instead of getting something else, they actually ended up just buying like a cheap one off of eBay over, got one on no contract or whatever the case may be, to actually keep that device going.
Definitely interesting stuff. The Z10 to me seems like there was so much hype pre-BB10, right? And a lot of people jumped on that Z10 when it first came out. So I'm glad that the user base is still there, but I would like to see some more numbers, like as Blaze had mentioned, kind of on passport side. Renell, in the sales force out there, I mean, what are you seeing in terms of people who want a BlackBerry device, are they still really focused on that QWERTY? Do you feel like John Chen's strategy of focusing on QWERTY with Classic and Passport and belaying an all-touch device, do you think that was wise?
It's really hard to say, to be honest. When you look at the market right now, I mean, they're pushing the Classic more than the Passport in a way right now, right? So you're seeing a lot of those legacy people moving over to the Classic, and then you have those high-end users who are okay with the larger size screen moving over to the Passport, right, to keep that QWERTY keyboard. Besides that, I mean, a lot of people are hanging on to the Z10s. Even my girlfriend has a Z10, and even though 10.3.1 is giving a couple problems for her, I mean, she still likes it, right? She has to upgrade, and she doesn't want to use the upgrade. Might as well just keep it. Then when it dies, we'll see what device is out by then. But a lot of people, as you guys said, the form factor, they keep it. So the market, it's geared towards where the QWERTY keyboard people right now. And the Z10 is on prepaid now, right? So whatever the left, it's just prepaid people buying it.
I wish there were more prepaid options in general for BlackBerry devices. Like, they have the Leap coming. I'm sure we're going to see that in some prepaid sense. I just feel like the device, especially because they got the price point right, in my opinion, a little bit high, but it's right. Like, you got to start it to a point where you can decrease it. You don't want to start it too low and then have to bring it to 0 immediately. So yeah. I think it's a smart price point for them to start at, and I think it's going to be a pretty solid device. As you guys said, you have people and friends who are on these Z10 and these elder BlackBerry devices, be it a Q10 or a Z10, and the devices still work really, really well, and the optimizations that have come through are actually substantial. A lot of us kind of forget the fact that if you get 2 updates on your iOS or Android device, it may not even work the way it needs to anymore, especially talking iOS devices. You get with a BlackBerry device, it kind of gets this renewed energy. So it's definitely kind of interesting to see that there are a lot of holdouts that are still on that Z10 form factor. It'd be crazy if maybe Chen later on in some years was able to reiterate on some of those hardware designs, refine them, and build in better specifications so people can have those upgrades. I know a lot of people who like the Z10 wish it came in more colors and had better specs.
Yeah. Or bigger battery. I mean, I'm pretty sure if BlackBerry could make a bigger battery for the Z10, same size, I mean, a lot of people would buy it.
Yeah, basically bigger battery and a better Wi-Fi antenna so that you can use, Miracast and Wi-Fi Direct, because I know on the Z10 that's one of the main things that's missing. But essentially, it's still a pretty solid device. Just revamp and freshen up the interiors and give more colors. Make that your low-end touch device, and it could be a pretty fun device.
And Blaze, you guys recently did a fire sale on CB for white Z30s. How did that go? I mean, how many people are jumping for a Z30 when the Leap is so close to coming out?
I forget the actual number because I forget how many that we had to begin with, but I think it was like 200 or 300 or something like that. Anyways, but we sold out of them. The funny thing is that it was on the site for a long period of time. Probably, I don't want to say a long period of time. That's not exactly accurate, but it was probably there for maybe 4 or 5 days, and nobody actually noticed it. There was like one guy in the forums who noticed it, and he shared it on in the forums. And after that, we're like, oh, maybe we should put up a blog post about it, of course. And as soon as we put up the blog post about it, everybody just started buying them, and then they were gone, and now we're trying to get more. And it's like, wow. Apparently, everybody wanted a Z30, especially at the price. I mean, BlackBerry was starting $349 in Canada and $399, I think, in the U.S., or maybe that was opposite. $349 in the U.S. and $399 in Canada. So yeah, I mean, when people saw the opportunity to pick one up for $250, even if it was white, they still jumped on it and they bought them. They bought them all. We don't have any more left.
It's cool because now we have like the roadmap for the year, so people can make smart decisions. I'm gonna get more bang for my buck if I go with this. You know, even as you said, even if it is white. I love the way you said that.
I didn't like the white Z30. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you know how we were talking about how the form factor in the Z10 was a nice form factor. I think the Z30 kind of edges it out in terms of the actual typing experience on the Z30, just because you have, you know, that bigger surface area to kind of swipe and touch those different letters. So if you're someone who really likes a virtual keyboard, and size doesn't really matter to you that much, then the BlackBerry Z30 is tops for typing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I want to grab one. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna grab one in a couple months if I don't grab the slider in time. So I'm with the rest of everybody.
The funny thing is I couldn't even grab a white one for myself because I don't have a white Z30. I have just like the regular black one that when it first came out, right? And I was like, I need to get one because in case it comes up, because I was actually like trying to find some good pictures of the white Z30, and for whatever reason we apparently never took any good pictures because nobody apparently had the device. It was just like all of the pictures from when BlackBerry actually showed it off. We didn't actually have any of our own pictures because nobody on the team actually bought one, right? And I'm like looking around for all these pictures, and I realized, hey, we literally don't have any of these pictures. I should probably order one so I can at least have our very own pictures for you, right? And I couldn't even order one. I'm like, I went to go order one, and they were all gone. I'm like, really? Can't even order a phone from my own site? The heck?
Those are first world problems, if ever I've heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So CloudMix supports currently all BB10 devices. Is that correct, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Unless someone like an email in a few weeks that like I forgot to add one or something. I don't know. I always screw something up on the vendor portal, and then it's like always a scramble to kind of get it fixed. But yeah, so at the moment, I think it supports all of them. Yeah, I'd say now that I'm used to supporting more than one size of device, it gets a lot easier now going forward when I make new projects, just because I'm used to it now.
So here's a question for you then. Are you using design units? Have you transitioned your applications over to that, or you're like, no, I'm not doing that?
You know what? I tried doing it, but to be honest, the benefits for me for like the few assets I need to use, it's just easier for me to do the math in pixels instead of having to do like all these
Conversions.
find all the numbers and convert it to design units. It's just, I mean, I'm sure down the road it's gonna bite me in the bum, but at the moment I find that I'm lazy. I just rather do it that way.
Well, honest answer. I'll take that. So we were kind of talking devices, and BlackBerry put up on their blog post about kind of a mini behind the scenes, 4 things to know about the BlackBerry Leap. I'm torn on the device. I know Blaze and I have had our back and forth in discussion of the device. He likes the Z3 a little bit more, etc. But the more I look at it, the more I think about it, the more excited I am to actually hold one and see how it looks and how it functions. I was impressed with the Classic when it first came out, coming from previously a Passport. I didn't see that there was a big gap in terms of the performance. Obviously, the Passport is more powerhouse, flagship in style. But when I look at the Leap, when I look at what it has going for it, when I look at the optimizations with 10.3.1, I'm actually, frankly, honestly excited about it. I mean, I want to see how maybe like it works side by side with the Z30. If in gaming and Android emulation, you really do see the difference in terms of specifications. I ultimately don't think we are, though. I don't think we're going to see too big a difference. I'd like to hear what you guys think about the Leap and kind of the behind the scenes that we did get on some of the design intent behind it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that basically the same thing you said. I want to see it not beside the Z30 actually, but the Z10. I want to see what the performance would be because even though you have lower, almost the same specs, I mean it's still newer hardware. So if they're gonna be optimizing it with 10.3 or 10.3.1, I mean, how much better is it gonna work with the Z10 with 10.3.1, right? I mean, BlackBerry can definitely position it and say, okay, well, even though it's the same specs, it's working a lot better than the Z10, and there's your upgrade for Z10 users, right? But that It all depends. It really all depends.
So right now, I believe it's going to launch with two colors. It's going to be white and then the dark gray model. Renell, of the two, which would you pick up if you had $300 to drop?
um, I'd say the white one. I change it up. I've always had a black device besides my white torch, so I'd say white, the white and gray one for sure.
The white one looks more, I don't know, elegant than what the gray one does.
The gray one still looks pretty nice, though. I like how it has the black accent, so it's kind of like black on black almost.
Yeah.
I'd agree though with Ronell the way they built the device. So they talk in their little Q&A about the device that they took some of the aspiration and design methodology behind the Z3 and the Passport and kind of just combined them, right? So you have the straight fret type sides that we're used to seeing on the Passport, and you still have some of the textured backing that we'd seen on the Z3 and the overall kind of profile with it. So it's very, very simplified and looks very like hefty. It looks like it kind of has the backing of the Classic, which I love because it's very grippy. I kind of almost wish it was on the Passport, or there was a way to kind of change out the back on the Passport or something like that. Because it does, at least with the red one, and Blaze, maybe you can attest to this. It's just slippery. You gotta definitely have you gotta have two hands on it. And the black one was kind of the same way. Speaking from someone who broke one, right? You gotta have those two hands on it. But even the soft touch porcelain feel on the black, I think, had a little bit more engagement in terms of dexterity for you than the white and the black, the red do. Excuse me. So I'm definitely interested to see. I'm gonna throw up some screen share right now of the actual posting from Crackberry, so you can see the accents on the actual buttons seem to stay the same, but the color on the actual shell that goes around is what's ultimately different. So I remember Chen did an interview on this, talking about the Leap, and he's like, I don't know how to be sexy. What do you want from me? You want me to give you more color options? Like, he's like, we could put another color shell on it, but we're not going to change what the principle behind the device is, right? And it's giving that entry-level, all-touch, secure form factor for users out there. So
it's
definitely
interesting. They note that the white one has the white one is probably more slippery because it has the porcelain finish on the white variant. So that's something else to consider if you're actually picking one up and trying to decide on the color. The black one will actually be grippier, and the white one will probably be a little bit slipperier in comparison and stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point to bring up. I like here that they're touting tooting their own horn in terms of the different design awards that they've won for these devices. And I think that's an important thing for them because there's not a lot of recognition in terms of their design and their industrial design methodologies. So it's good to see that, one, that they can focus on the finer details and execute on a very simple device, but still kind of make it feel new. Because ultimately, as we've discussed, it's a Z10, as Ronell said. Brandon, what about you? Color-wise, which would you go for, the dark gray or the white?
Well, usually, like if I was talking about a car, I would go for the, I don't know, because black kind of shows, fingerprint and stuff more. And if you have a white, it doesn't show fingerprints as much. But I think ultimately, actually, I'd probably go with black because it's a bit more subdued. It's not so flashy. It's, just more classic like that.
We say black, but the actual color is shadow gray.
Shadow gray.
Yeah, just to be clear, it's actually shadow gray is what the actual color is.
Yeah.
Because it's it's gray on the black or it's gray on the back, while all of the buttons themselves are actually black.
But let's be honest. I mean, like every single device that they've come out with has a white and a black variation. So
Yeah.
I mean, like, how surprised can we be at this point? Like, I really don't care. Just give me the device. I'll just.
It's more surprising when there isn't a white version.
Like if there is a red one, okay, like we're talking. But white or black. I mean, or shadow gray or black or white, whatever.
Is that really? Someone just told me that today is the 2-year anniversary of the Z10's release in the United States. which is just ironic, I think, because we're having this discussion about the Leap, which is basically the same device. I find it also kind of interesting. You know, Apple has their space gray, and now BlackBerry has their shadow gray.
Shadow gray, yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it seems that is a kind of desired. It gives that good contrast, right? That you can still have the black accents with the gray, and they don't kind of blanch each other out. And with the white, you kind of have the same thing. This photo down here demonstrates it well. The black buttons, the black microphone hole, and then the black buttons here on the side, it all seems to lend itself very well to the aesthetic, so there's good contrast. So again, check this post out. It's on BlackBerry blogs. Of course, you can go read it over at Crackberry as well. Very interesting piece on some of the design methodology behind the BlackBerry Leap. Thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to share it with everyone.
Oh yeah, look at that, March 22nd.
Yeah.
March 22nd, AT&T BlackBerry Z10 now available at Amazon for $199. I wrote it on the in 2013.
That is too funny, too funny. That's why I love these casts, because everyone seems to chime in with such awesome information. So really, really cool. 2-year anniversary of the Z10 here on Upstream 41.
Let's take a poll. How many of you guys lined up to get your Z10 on the first day?
No.
Nobody did? I did. Well, I was in Waterloo, though, so I think that's like one of the few places that actually had lineups for devices when it launched.
I was I got my Z10 when I think the event was in New York.
Yeah, we got our devices like 3 months before.
Yeah. The event was like in New York or whatever, and picked one up there. So I didn't have to wait in line. I didn't have to even wait for an order or anything, which was pretty great at the time.
It was kind of weird because you always hear about those lineups for Apple events, and then I was in Waterloo and like I couldn't find a Z10 like the opening day. I couldn't actually get one because they were sold out everywhere. And, like I was going to like every store, like the Best Buy mobile shops and everything, just to buy one like off contract, and they just didn't have any. And like there's BlackBerry reps at like the mall, and they're like. And I'm like, I was telling them, like, yeah, I really want to buy one, but where can I get one? And they like kept like contacting people and trying to find out which stores in Waterloo had some, so I could go and check them out. It was kind of cool. I'd never seen that in Waterloo before, because they had always been in like such a decline at that point. So it was kind of cool to see that.
I think we did the same in Toronto as well when we were there. We went to all of the Rogers stores in Toronto, like all the Best Buys and the Future Shops and all that stuff. And Win Mobile at the time, because they had it too. So we were going around to all the stores and asking to see their inventory and everything like that. I believe we even did like me and Kevin helped sell one in Toronto at the Rogers store because of the video calling. The person there was so impressed by the video calling that they bought one there right then and there.
It's still good video calling and still very exclusive to the platform.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that response, for me, I saw all these like stores were sold out for the Z10. I know it was in Waterloo and in Toronto and stuff, and then like a few months later, we heard about like how they had to like take a huge loss on all these unsold Z10s, and it's like holy cow! It's like it was just crazy those few months, or I guess the summer after the launch.
Everyone talks about that, but if you follow the financial earnings through, they did a pre-tax write-off, so they got a lot of that money back. They had a bunch of other tax returns from different investments that they've made in selling off different entities. They basically broke even on it. It almost as if it didn't happen. So yes, it was a media blow for them, right? The two devices failed, the Z10 and Q10, and it followed the trend of the playbook before it and some of the other devices, right, with the Storm and whatnot. But ultimately, I think it was part of the transition for BlackBerry, and it got them to a place where they needed to be, right? Now we see the devices like the Passport actually shining in a light and with an OS that is better suited to be viable in the marketplace today.
Yeah.
10.0 was bollocks. It was just
yeah. There's no other way around it. I mean, at that specific point in time when it was launched, you could say there's essentially two avenues that you could take with it. You could say that it was absolutely amazing that BlackBerry pulled it off and they released it and they had it as much together as what they did at that point in time. But then there is the secondary side where you could say, okay, this was absolutely rubbish at the point in time when they launched it. But the thing is that from a BlackBerry user perspective, it was absolutely amazing because you were going from BlackBerry OS into BlackBerry 10, which is absolutely something new, something fascinating, and your device started to work almost like everything else that was on the market at that particular time. You know, you didn't have to worry about Biz or anything like that. You didn't have to worry about like truncated emails or any of that nonsense anymore because you were no longer on the Biz platform and stuff. So as a BlackBerry user at that specific point in time, it was absolutely amazing. But when you compared it to everything else that was out there, such as Android and iOS at that specific point in time, you know, you could see that it was a little bit shaky in terms of how much was actually completed and how much further they still had to go within the operating system. And I'm sure everybody here would essentially agree that, you know, each iteration that has been released since then, 10.0, 10.1, 10.2.1, 10.2, sorry, 10.2.1, and then 10.3, you know, the OS has gotten better as each individual iteration has gone out. You know, I think it's pretty fair to say that every time that we get an OS update, there is at least the majority of the people are saying, like, why didn't this launch on BlackBerry 10 when BlackBerry 10 was launched? Like, why wasn't this available?
This is what we've been waiting for, guys.
Yeah.
It's finally here.
I have my reservations on 10.2.1. I never had a good experience on that OS. That's the only one, but everything else has been top notch. I don't even remember that much anticipation for 10.1. Even the base OS, I was kind of content with it. I don't even remember that much pent-up anticipation for 10.1 when it launched, to be honest.
No, because essentially 10.0, well, it rolled out as 10.0.0.9, I do believe, if I'm correct. But, you know, there wasn't many additions to it. They just basically built upon what was already existing, and they added a few new things. But at the core, it was still essentially the same OS. So the majority of the people didn't actually realize the difference between the actual launch version. It came so quickly afterward that nobody really cared about it. There wasn't any time to care about it because of the fact that, you know, there was so, I guess you could say, so little done on the actual launch version. And then when they moved into it, they're like, oh, well, okay. It wasn't that big of a deal because of the fact that people were so excited that it was BlackBerry 10. You know, there wasn't much of a demand for things to be added at that point in time because it still looked new, it still looked fresh, and people were excited about it. But,
yeah, they were working on a couple of things. I'm looking back at it, and I'm thinking of some of the things that they added. There were things like remote file access with a link. They updated search for BlackBerry World. They improved email synchronization. And that gesture where you can slide to a message in Hub and then slide down or previous without having to let the message go. There were subtle refinements like that. So as Blaze said, it really wasn't substantial. It's not something you'd look at and be like, oh, this is markedly different.
yeah.
But he's right, you know, the OS has progressed at each stage, and I'm interested to see, is it going to continue to be BlackBerry 10 in 3 or 4 years, or are they going to push for some kind of jump to another level in terms of be it the QNX kernel underneath, and or their own marketing? We've looked at Microsoft looking and killing off sub-brands like IE, they're killing off Internet Explorer and building something new. What do you guys think of in terms of BlackBerry 10, whether it's valuable to change the name or not? We know where Chen is with this, right? He said, you know, renaming your child isn't going to get him better grades, you know?
Yeah.
So we know where he says, but in terms of the marketability of this OS, especially as they expand into IoT, into broader markets, does it make sense to just go like QNX Mobile or something of that nature to kind of make it more broad?
I think they can, you know, they can maybe come up with some code names for their OSs, like the big drops in OSs that they have. If you look at it, Apple with their desktop or laptop software, it's OS X Yosemite, OS X Mavericks. So basically, that's basically, you know, a Macintosh 10 OS X, but they're giving code names for every iteration of a major OS update. So they could do something like that with BlackBerry 10. Just because the BlackBerry 10 name, I think it might have maybe a year or two left, and then it's going to start, becoming a bit stale, the name. So they need to do something to freshen it up a bit. Maybe QNX Mobile, but I also think QNX Mobile, it's kind of important to keep that a bit separate at the moment still, as their IoT offering and M2M kind of software. And as they converge them, maybe they can combine those names a bit.
Agree with the viewpoints. What about you, Ronell? What do you think in terms of the brand value that BB10 has or doesn't have?
I was going to say exactly the same thing as Brandon. Keeping the QNX and BlackBerry 10 a little bit separate because they got themselves an IoT, so anything IoT related, they want to keep the QNX name with it. In terms of BlackBerry 10, it's hard to say. I mean, even if they were to do a rapid or huge change to it, it's hard to change the name from one to the next unless it's a complete change again, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it all depends on what they do with it. It all comes down to that. 10.4, 10.5, 10.6. At one point, they're going to stop working on it and maybe again use that new underneath the new kernel and switch to a different name. And I don't know, marketability side, they could still keep BlackBerry 10 because most people hang on to the device names more than the operating system name. So
Agreed.
I think they could keep it.
It'd be expensive to kind of rebrand this so far in now that you've created kind of that substance of the actual brand in terms of the OS and the device names, right? They're all BlackBerry 10 devices, at least to our prior conceptions of them. So definitely interesting to get you guys' thoughts on that particular aspect. So we talked about the Leap. And if we look at BlackBerry as their kind of strategy evolves in terms of software and bringing different service solutions across, it was an announcement that crossed the wire in terms of BBM Protected coming out and becoming available on iOS and Android. I thought this was interesting. It didn't really get enough gusto in terms of the media coverage of it, but I think it's something very important as we look at the BlackBerry Experience Suite, we look at BBM, we look at their overall strategy, and that they really are looking to bring a lot of what they do, their core competencies, to all platforms. So what do you guys think about BBM Protected right now? Do you think it's one of those drivers for BBM? Do you think, I guess here's the question, are they making more off BBM Protected or BBM stickers?
Right now, I think they're making more off stickers.
I think James is pretty much supporting BBM at this moment with all the stickers he buys.
So supposedly Kevin's got more than I do, so we'll give him that. I mean, but no, it's definitely an interesting conversation in terms of BBM Protected. I'm glad that they're now bringing these services out, and they're sticking to their own timelines, it seems, right? They'll say something, they say, hey, in the following months, we expect to have it here, bam, here it is. I like that they're following up on their word. We can take them at it and put the value to it then because we know they're going to come through for it. I haven't captured many instances at all where a notion's been set up and they've fallen through on actually delivering on it. I like this kind of executive style so far.
Yeah, and I don't think BlackBerry has gotten enough credit for that over the past few months. I guess it's fair to say the past few months, but realistically, it's been, since John Chen came on board, I don't think BlackBerry has gotten enough credit for actually keeping their timeline at this point in time. The previous administration was absolutely dreadful in terms of keeping their timelines. They would say one thing, but then it would constantly be delayed months upon months. I think the only big thing that I could possibly think of in terms of John Chen not exactly meeting the demand was probably with 10.3.1 because there were some instances in cases where he said it would be delivered at this point in time, but then there was it didn't come out until the next year, which is understandable, but that was particularly the only thing that comes as one highlight that I can think of that he didn't necessarily meet demand when he said he would meet the demand for it. He's always been, pretty precise in terms of saying, okay, we're going to announce this today and we're going to launch it on this time frame, and then it has actually come out at that during that time frame, or at least within that window at some point in time. So I don't think we've, as end users, we've given BlackBerry enough credit in that area for them actually delivering things on time at this point. It's become an expectation that things should be delivered on time, of course, but BlackBerry has significantly improved that over the past few months, or at least since John Chen has come on board. And like I said, we don't necessarily give them enough credit for that particular time.
I'm waiting for Brandon to jump on here and say something. We're all going off in the chat about this topic.
We're all praising BlackBerry right now, but I remember there was one point in time when a chat messenger app by the name, I think it was called BlackBerry Messenger, it came on Android and iOS, and at the time, I recall they promised video chat cross-platform within the year. And then it's kind of like never been mentioned since.
Okay, Brandon, I'm gonna let you finish, but Torsten Hines was the best BlackBerry CEO ever. No, I mean, this is the same regime that also promised the playbook would get updated to BB10, that we'd get cross-platform video by the end of the year, which was 2013. Now it's 2015. I think priorities have changed. We've had a discussion, and people have talked with Sims. I think even Jubei spoke with Sims at one of the security summits. I think the one over in New York. And he asked that very question, and he was like, if we're going to do cross-platform video, it's going to be to enterprise first, right? Not necessarily that we're totally dissuaded on the whole idea, but that they have their priorities, right? The consumer demand for their messenger is very small in terms of the global messaging market, right? A lot of these other competitors are doing this type of stuff for free. So we see BBM meetings as a real transition in their overall strategy with video.
And BBM meetings is essentially the cross-platform video. It's not necessarily the cross-platform video that they were referring to at that time, but it's still cross-platform video. So.
I fully agree with what you guys say. Obviously, priorities have changed. At the same time, I also think that they are kind of relying a lot on the consumer side as well as for revenue. When we look at stickers, we look at subscription pins. What's the other thing that they have? What's the other subscription thing? Ads.
No ads.
No ads and stuff like that. Looking at channels that have no advertisement in the channel. So I mean, while they are focusing on enterprise for BBM protected, maybe video for enterprise. At the same time, they've also kind of had a vested interest in getting revenue from the consumer side, and I think that cross-platform video, could lend itself to that.
I've said on previous upstreams where if BlackBerry was smart, and this is something we say quite often, right? If this, if that. If BlackBerry was smart, they would do the a la carte options in shop. So they'd allow you, if you want to just buy a custom pin, you can just buy a custom pin. But they talked about message retraction being a premium feature, timed messages being a feature. And right now those aren't a la carte options. We still have those built into our messaging experience. So to that end, maybe there will be something in the future. It's a blended BBM premium. You pay whatever kind of rate. It's going to be exorbitant based on what we've seen so far, right? But we're still gonna buy it. But maybe it bundles in the functionality of BBM meetings because we're paying for it on the monthly. Right now, the enterprises can buy it on a yearly invoice. So I think you pay $150 and you're able to get it. So it just would be interesting overall to see if they kind of transition to do a more cross. Feature type of service solution for us within the shop. Would you guys be more, I guess, willing to buy into a overall buy once, have unlimited access, or buy the individual a la carte options?
And buy it if they basically had like two separate versions of BBM Messenger in there. If they had like BBM Premium and they had regular BBM, I would be more likely to buy the BBM feature if it gave me everything that was applicable at that point in time. If I could just pay whatever $10 for this BBM Premium, whatever the case may be, I would buy that instead of the a la carte options because it seems like a more reasonable thing to do to be able to go ahead and purchase that BBM Premium over paying this and that. When you start paying for a la carte options, I think it gets to the point where end users ultimately feel like they've sort of been nickeled and dimed out of a lot of money at that point in time. because, you know, as much as people like options and stuff like that, to be able to go ahead and purchase those a la carte options, it does get excessive to the point where people start, why do I need to pay for this? Why do I need to pay for that? Sort of thing. So if they had one particular BBM premium option that I could download and pay for from BlackBerry World, I'd be more apt to take that on than basically just picking and choosing exactly what I wanted.
Right,
But,
and it almost feels like you're getting nickeled and dimed in that sense, especially if you want to buy like all of them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's where when does too many options become, you know, excessive? When does that having too many of those options go a little bit overboard? You know, I mean, you can only offer so many things, and then people start like, well, why do I need to pay for this? Why do I need to pay for that? You know, and if there was that all
especially BlackBerry users, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Free. Yeah.
Everybody wants everything for free.
So Brandon had to drop off. He had a little bit of a personal emergency, so hopefully everything's going well on his end. In his stead, Jubei has magically appeared, almost out of the thickness of the fog. How's it going, Jubei? We were done. I was going to close this up in a couple of minutes. How's it going?
Yeah, I just came to say hi. That's all. For everyone wondering where I was working on a photo shoot out in Jersey with a couple of new music artists. So just came jump on and say hi, and that's it.
And support the Mets, right? We need to get you a BerryFlow hat. Oh, the Islanders.
Yeah.
Actually,
I gotta say though, whipping out the passport throughout the day of production definitely caught the attention of a few guys, and they kind of fell in love with the device right off the bat. So they're already asking where they can get one.
That is the question. Don't send them to an AT&T store, please. What's your experience with it, Jubei? You got to have both devices. I mean, give us a little quick summary between the two in terms of the experience and the design quality. I know you've voiced some qualms that you had with the AT&T variant. You seem like a guy who really knows what he wants. So in terms of the devices, are you leaning one way or to the other in terms of the design?
You're totally setting this up because everyone knows that I absolutely hate the AT&T variant. Kind of like the Fisher-Price version, the cheap knockoff of the Passport designed by BlackBerry. Now I have both of them here. It just, I mean, it's I don't even know where to begin, but just physically the device, right? It's lighter, it's slightly bigger all around, the AT&T variant, and all the materials are different. So it's interesting to see why BlackBerry decided to go along with AT&T's request to make such a device. You look here, the space on the chin is actually bigger than it is on the original Passport version.
Yeah.
Even if you press, like, let's say the backing on the Passport, it's really solid. It's just a solid piece there. The texture, it really has a great feel. On the back of the AT&T variant, you can actually depress the back cover and press into the device and hit the back.
Ugh, it's squishy. Why is yours so squishy?
You know, and the texture's different. You could tell that they went with probably a more
tacky,
less expensive material. We all know that the chin here on the bottom of the Passport is actually plastic on the bottom.
Oh, so it's like the classic, yeah.
Right. So you see the slit, and it's the plastic all the way around. When I was holding it, I literally thought that the back cover could come off because I depressed it, and I see the space underneath the port, and I actually picked it up. I don't know if you could see. But
that's awful.
It looks like you can actually lift off the back cover. I'm like, are you serious right now? I can't. The buttons on the frets and stuff like that. The buttons are different too. They feel they don't feel as premium. You feel the materials on the original Passport. You got the the high quality stainless steel I-beam construction all around. Everything about it's just solid. It's tight, and when I picked up the AT&T, it was just, I don't know. And it's really interesting how BlackBerry would actually go along. I mean, I'm sure they don't mind because it probably costs a lot less to
It's
produce
just like
these devices.
it's absolutely sanitized, you know? Like they just took whatever it had unique about it and just kind of washed it
Yeah.
over with
So
this
and I
curvy.
know it's hard to tell, but when you hold both devices, I mean, you would have to hold both devices in your hand to really see the fine details of both devices, just to know that the original design is what you want. For people out there who saw the AT&T variant but never held the original, I know it's a little tougher for you guys to kind of make that call, but especially if you've never seen the original and you pick up the AT&T variant as your first time, you're going to say, wow, this is great. But the original is really what you want. And the fact that you could just buy it and just throw in your SIM card just makes it even stranger why AT&T.
And I believe, I may be wrong, someone can yell at me in the comments if I am. I believe if you were to buy each of them outright, the original is cheaper by like $50.
Yeah.
So it's just highly amusing.
Very strange. I don't get it. So even when I picked up the device from BlackBerry's offices here in New York, they handed it over to me, and I opened it just to see it, and they weren't really enthusiastic about the design either. They were just like, well, there it is. But they all have the original passport. Like they all brought out their own path. Like no one has the AT&T variant. They just like, well, that's the AT&T one.
Hey, but it's an exclusive, you know, so at the same time, it is nice that they have so many different form factors out there for it, right? They've got the red, the white, the piano black original, the AT&T variant, the gold, and maybe later this year they'll have a a Porsche design variant. So, you know, the more the merrier is my opinion, right? It's
Don't
not
talk
perfect.
about that one. I mean, I'm plotting about how I can actually get Kevin to buy me a Porsche design passport if one appears. I'm like,
told you,
how
Chris,
can
I
I
already
get
saved
this?
money for it, man.
You need to get that editor-in-chief incentive.
Yeah. How can I slide that in there?
Chris-
That's a must-have.
Chris, I'm gonna need you to hit your deliverables, okay? So let me unlock it off Jubei so we can stop staring at his Islanders shirt, which is friggin' awesome. I love how the Y turns into the hockey stick. That's just great.
Yeah.
But I think we covered everything we needed to cover this stream, guys. I really appreciate having you guys on, as always. Great dialogue. Hopefully Brandon's doing okay and working with his family. We'll be in our prayers on this end. Ronell, Jubei, Chris, thank you for coming on, and I'll look forward to speaking with you guys again next week.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Guys.
Definitely subscribe if you're interested in these different podcasts. We have the earnings call on the 27th, which is going to be this Friday. So on the 29th, 2 days after, we'll have a full summation and be able to discuss whatever is announced and or discussed at the earnings call. Hopefully Chen set some precedents for some of the other devices, maybe some timelines. Maybe I'm just talking out of my butt.
We all know he likes to pop things up in the middle of nowhere, so.
Exactly. You never know with Mr. Chen. So we'll keep our eyes peeled, keep it locked on BerryFlow, and of course crackberry.com for the latest. Thank you guys. Have a great night.